In tonight's Government Insider, electronic health records, the Pentagon has awarded a $4.3 billion contract to Leidos, putting an end to the two-year acquisition process. But now the real work begins. For more, I'm joined by Francis Rose, host of In Depth with Francis Rose on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. Francis, we've been talking during the break. I could spend the next hour with you talking everything from government contracts to politics.
Thank you.
But we only have a little bit of time, so let's talk about this huge contract. Huge, but not as expensive as the Pentagon feared it would be. How did Leidos win this bid?
Well, they won the bid primarily, Rebecca, because they're going to be relying on mostly a commercial solution. They're going to take a commercial solution that's already available to healthcare providers across the country and customize it, they say in a minor way, to work for the Department of Defense. The problem comes sometimes, though, in these government contracts when the agency, in this case DOD, decides as time goes on, well, we also need to make sure it can do this. Well, we also need to make sure it can do this. And the vendor inevitably and correctly says, well, yes, we can make it do that, but it's going to cost you more money.
But the Pentagon's bragging that they took care of that up front, that they got a contract that says that they're not only able to get some of those costs written in, but they get all the data from this contract so they can switch vendors, they say, if they want to later on down the road.
That's correct. The question becomes, though, exactly what you want another vendor to potentially make this system do. And that's where it really depends on how this is executed over the next several years.
Well, before we even get to that, 2 points. First of all, this has got to be striking fear in the heart of everyone. Obamacare rollout didn't go so well. Trying to do something on such a massive scale for all the different medical facilities that the Pentagon operates. Are their nerves just sky high at the Pentagon that it's simply too big a project to take on?
Well, I don't think so, because I think they wouldn't have taken it on, and it's something that needs to be done. The Department of Defense has wanted to do this for many years. The key piece here has always been, how do we make these records transferable to the Department of Veterans Affairs when somebody transitions from care in the DOD system to the VA system? For a long time, interoperability was assumed to be one of the key pieces here. Frank Kendall now, who's in charge of this acquisition at the Defense Department, said when this was rolled out, interoperability is not the center anymore. So there is a little bit of confusion, I would say, in the contracting community about what they're going to expect this consortium to do.
And confusion may be a euphemism. People thought that this was the intent of the new system. Now they're saying it won't be interoperable with the VA, but we're not worried about it. That's not a problem. Is this a mistake for the Pentagon? Is Congress going to look carefully at this contract and say, hey, this isn't accomplishing the mission?
So your first question, is this a mistake? That remains to be seen, because a lot of it depends on execution. Now, a former Defense Department official explained this to me in this way. When you go on Expedia and you look at the data that all of the providers are putting in there, all of the airlines and all the hotels and all of that, they're not providing that information in exactly the same piece of software, but they're providing it in the same format. So if the formats match up, then this school of thought goes, then this system will work fine. If that's what the Defense Department winds up with, then they should be in pretty good shape. If that's not what they wind up with, then they can have big problems.
Because it is a few billion under what they thought they were originally going to have to pay, so we will say that for it. However, it is such a large project that we are nowhere near an end date. This is going to take a while to roll out. What is the timeline here?
Well, the timeline here also remains to be seen. This could take as long as 10 years. It could be as much as $11 billion. The initial award was for just over $4 billion, but that's just for the first 2 years of work. And the incentive that you talked about earlier, the fact that the Defense Department controls the information and could go to another vendor, is an effort to kind of enforce the same kinds of standards that maybe didn't exist in the healthcare.gov rollout, where it was one big bet with one company, and they wound up having to go to another company to save it anyway.
No one wants to repeat that.
That's exactly right.
Let's turn to OPM and these personnel records. How many million are we up to now? 24 million
21 and a half so far that have been impacted by the cyber breaches. I
had security clearance. I'm still waiting to get my email to notify me whether I've been impacted or not. Not everyone has been notified. And now they're saying that the promise of free credit checks and financial oversight is now at least 2 months away?
Yeah, the Office of Personnel Management had some questions asked of it about how it awarded the credit protection and identity protection for the first breach, for the one that affected about 4 million people. There were some people, including members of Congress, who said you did it too quickly, you didn't follow the right procedures. So they're trying to go extra slow this time and make sure that they've exhausted all of the possibilities that already existed. The federal government already had ways to provide identity protection if an agency needed to do so.
Okay.
And OPM chose not to do that for reasons that are still not clear.
Understandably, you come under attack from Congress, but now contractors and others, and I can bet Congress will come back and say, this isn't fast enough. If people need to see whether their identity's been hacked, they need it now.
Yeah.
They can't wait 2 months.
And the procurement could take as long as the fall to be finalized. And so what that means is people will have gone as long as 6 to 7 months between when the initial hack was learned about by the agency, not when it happened, and when the protection was finally in place. I guess the only saving grace here, Rebecca, is there are a lot of people that don't believe that this had anything to do with identity theft and trying to open credit cards in the names of federal employees. Most people still continue to believe that this was an espionage attempt by the Chinese government, and so the credit protection or monitoring doesn't really matter anyway.
I don't know if we want to say let's hope, since that's a daunting thought as well.
Yeah.
But luckily they knew it when they gave me my security clearance. I had no money then, I have no money now. If they want to try and get a credit card in my name, have at it. Good luck. I'll trade identities. Thanks so much for joining us as always.